What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of What the X. This is What the X, episode 81. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Help me grow this channel. It's good to be here, and let's just get started with the video to kind of give some context into what we're going to be talking about today with some tweets from Vance. But without further ado, it's good to get into the videos right now. Listen to this, guys.
But let me just say that we've been hard at work over the last several months trying to make sure that we take care of the people's money and trying to make sure that the services that exist for the betterment of our fellow citizens, whether they're low-income kids who need access to food resources, whether they're low-income families who need access to medical benefits, that those programs are protected for the people who actually need them, that they don't exist to enrich fraudsters, but they exist for the American people for whom Congress has said they're entitled. And that's exactly what this fraud task force is about. One of the things that I thought going into it, but that I've learned about fraud, is that it always has two fundamental victims. The first victim is the American taxpayer, who is generously paid into these programs in an effort to give their fellow citizens a leg up. But it also has as its victims the people who are meant to benefit from these programs, who are not able to benefit, or maybe are benefiting less because of what a disaster some of the fraud has wrought in these programs.
So yeah, as you guys can see from that clip there, JD Vance is really coming out and just saying that they have a task force assembled through the approval of the president. And if you guys haven't been, keeping up with some recent news, some headlines, and I've even talked about it quite a bit myself, is the fraud, for instance, in Minnesota with Nick Shirley documenting it and then getting called out by legacy media like CNN, who were questioning his journalism, questioning his integrity, really just trying to do a smear campaign on him. Tim Walz and his administration trying to distance themselves from it. Tim Walz dropping out of the governor race was really crazy. If he had nothing to hide, it seems kind of weird to do the damage control. But maybe just admitting defeat or failure in allowing such fraud to occur within these Medicaid and Medicare systems. And this is just to highlight kind of the need for the task force. This is to highlight that need for it.
Guess how many convictions or indictments has Hawaii had over the last few years in its Medicaid fraud program? The answer is zero. Not a single indictment, not a single conviction, because the administrators of the Hawaii program just don't take it seriously. They don't think that fraud is a big enough problem. They don't care about protecting resources, and they don't care about protecting that Medicaid program. So what does that mean? That means that if you're committing fraud in Medicaid in Hawaii, at least up until now, hopefully now they're going to take it seriously, you have had effectively free reign from the government of Hawaii to commit as much fraud as you want. That is a complete disgrace. In New York, which does a little bit better, but not by much, New York has had 9 indictments over the last year. 9 indictments. That's a $100 billion Medicaid program just in New York, and you've had 9 indictments. Indiana, which has about a third of the population of the state of New York, has had more than 4 times as many indictments over the same period. So does anybody here seriously think that the good people of Indiana are 12 times more likely to commit fraud than the people of New York? No, of course not. That's absurd.
And that was just to highlight kind of the underreporting of, New York and Hawaii. So it's like we're sending this money for, the taxpayer money is going towards these programs, and it doesn't seem that there's any oversight. So it's open, to the fraudsters to be able to just take complete advantage of it. So that's why JD Vance was really seemed excited announcing this anti-fraud task force through President Trump's approval there. And then the whole reason I was bringing these clips up, and he had this White House press conference while Trump's in China doing who knows what, talking to Xi Jinping about something, I'm sure. But we're going to get to the tweets that really set off the whole reason that I was bringing up those clips there. And that is right here. And this is the first one, guys. And it's from JD Vance. JD Vance says, "It's been almost 2 months since President Trump took the bold step of officially forming the task force to eliminate fraud. We've already uncovered tens of billions of dollars in defrauded taxpayer money, prosecuted dozens of fraudsters, and stopped billions in suspicious payments. And we're just getting started. So why has it taken the federal government until now to finally tackle fraud? Because Andrew Ferguson and I are taking a new approach. Here's how. Until President Trump's inauguration, federal anti-fraud efforts have been defined by a pay-and-chase approach. Federal agencies like HHS issue payments and then only take steps to identify fraud on the back end. The federal government might prosecute the alleged fraudsters, but only if the fraud is big enough. It's a flawed approach that's predictably exploited. Every year, states lose about $250 billion to fraud, but recovers only about $10 billion. Plain and simple, pay and chase does not stop fraud. Every year, the United States loses about $250 billion of fraud, but recovers only about. So that's a net loss of $240 billion in tax fraud. That's crazy. And then he continues. He has got more here. Our new approach starts with close coordination. We are orchestrating all federal agencies' anti-fraud efforts from the White House. Rather than haphazard fraud mitigation, the task force is focusing agencies' efforts on target programs where spending is high, but anti-fraud protections are low. We're already uncovering major fraud scandals across a range of federal programs. Kelly Loeffler has referred 22 billion in fraudulent losses or in fraudulent loans for collection. 22 billion. Holy crap. Linda McMahon has identified 1 billion in fraudulent student loans from ghost students. And Brooke Rollins has identified 14,000 luxury car owners receiving SNAP benefits in just one state. Wow. So there's look at that. That's I mean, hey, those are real numbers to most of us, even though the I guess the tax bubble's so large with how much everyone's putting into it to where maybe these numbers don't seem crazy when you're talking about $1 trillion in debt. But I mean, hey, every billion does add up, right? And then he continues. JD Vance is just going on a rampage here. We are ramping up federal prosecutions against fraudsters, not just because American taxpayers deserve justice, but because active enforcement holds fraudsters accountable and deters fraud in the first place. Our message is simple. No fraud is too big or too small to prosecute. If you are defrauding the American taxpayer, we will find you and take you to court. To do so, we established a new fraud division at DOJ, led by AAG Colin McDonald. In just the last 2 months, they've put fraudsters on notice. They've executed 22 search warrants against fraudulent daycare centers in Minnesota, including the Quality Learning Center. Remember the one Nick Shirley was talking about, guys? They've launched a major crackdown in LA against Medicare fraudsters who stole over $50 million. They've secured multi-year prison sentences against fraudsters in a $522 million health care scheme. We are ordering the states to hold up their end of the bargain and police fraudsters in federal programs they oversee. Today, governors in all 50 states were sent letters to use their existing resources to identify and prosecute fraudsters in the Medicaid program. Wow, that's crazy. He's so putting all the states on notice because effectively, like the federal government funds all 50 states, and then the states also collect state tax to fund their own state Medicaid. So even though, so really, yeah, and then let's just continue. They're probably going to explain what I want to talk about here, but let's just continue. Alongside aggressive prosecution, the task force is preventing fraud before taxpayer money leaves the federal government. Agencies will now pay only when they are confident that a payment is legitimate and lawful. As a result, Trump administration agencies are now establishing fraud indicators and analyzing data to detect patterns of fraud. Things like unreasonable growth, impossible services, and other hallmarks of fraud. When an unacceptable risk of fraud is identified, the money stops. We're seeing this approach pay dividends already in one of the biggest federal programs, Medicare. Dr. Oz has identified nearly 800 suspected fraudulent providers of hospice and home health care services and withheld payments for their questionable services. So far, we have saved $1.4 billion in potentially fraudulent payments and have paused enrollment of additional providers while Dr. Oz roots out the fraudsters in the system. This is an approach that works and will be scaled to other federal programs. Wow. And then he continues with this last part, guys. The days of pay and chase are over. It's time to prevent and prosecute. Stay tuned for more at WH Fraud TF. So, guys, that was a huge announcement, I think, even though it could be all for show if you are taking the cynical viewpoint that it's just smoke and mirrors. They always say this. What happened to Doge, guys? Remember when they said Doge was going to be the one to root out all the fraud? And now we're coming back to this new task force to do what we were hoping Doge would do. But I mean, they did have some numbers there, like the 1 billion in student loans that are from ghost students. I mean, $1 billion in student loans, that's crazy, even though who knows how many billions of dollars there are for student loan debt, which is just disgusting. Schools should not be that expensive. It doesn't help society to limit education through money and how much you can have to afford it. It's ridiculous. But I that's getting away from the point. The main thing is that they are seeming to get some fraud recorded, and they're making arrest. So it's like, hey, you better watch out. It's not the Wild West anymore. You're gonna get in real trouble for this fraud. And hopefully, it keeps the states accountable. I think it gets a little scary and a little dicey when the federal government can overreach. And maybe not even that the federal government is the bad guy in the scenario, but when you have states rebelling against the federal government, that's when it gets really scary, and it makes you kind of concerned about like, oh God, could you ever see maybe like New York or Minnesota for instance? That one's a little crazier. Probably like New York or California seceding and being like their own country if like the people of the states just did not want to participate in the federal government. It would be scary because I think the federal government has enough power to stop it, but it's like, man, a rebellion or something. I would hope that we can all get along and like figure this out and just make sure that the taxpayer is not getting frauded. And also, I think JD Vance made a good point in his speech. Was that like this is a two victim thing? It's like, yeah, the taxpayer is one thing, but what about the people that really need these services? What about the people that do need Medicaid? It's like, and then it gets even worse if like these states are not reporting and not doing what they're supposed to do to stop all this fraud from happening and not recovering any of this fraud. Then I do understand why you would want to shut off some of the funds, because the federal government, like we were talking about, funds all the states, and the states also, are responsible for the other portion of how to fund Medicaid programs. So, I mean, it just would hurt the people that utilize these services a lot too. So these fraudsters, they're not just hurting the taxpayers, but they're hurting the people that really could utilize these services, because it's like everyone like it, no one likes paying taxes, right? No one likes hard-earned money going towards Uncle Sam. But what we do all appreciate is that there are services that are necessary for the public good to help people, and like we don't want to think about the homelessness and the epidemics like this, and all the drugs that are getting out on the streets and everything. I think everyone and people, kids with no parents and orphanages and all these charities, things like that, people are willing to give some of their hard-earned money away to help if it makes sense and it's not going towards fraud, right, guys? That's what it's all about. It's like, I think the lack of trust that the typical American citizen has with the government is at an all-time low. So that just makes the tax base eroded because people are maybe skipping out on paying taxes even though that's illegal. It's a crazy time we're living in, and we need more trust in the government. And I think a big way that you do that is by making some real arrests and actually getting fraudsters kicked out, and also exposing all the politicians that are allowing this to happen. It's not like this is going, uh, you know, like ignorant and they're just not understanding that fraud's happening. No, these people are purposely leaving those check marks left out. So fraud needs to be called out when it's happening, and people have been too passive and allowing these things to happen. Maybe they're getting a cut of it too. I don't know, but there are some people that I would like to question. One of them being Tim Walz, and another being Governor Newsom. And the fact that Governor Newsom is like the head guy for the Democrats, it feels like it just makes me wonder. And it's not just him, the Republicans too. It's like the fraud is bad, guys, and I do appreciate that they're getting a task force, I guess. But that was really just this episode was just JD Vance coming out on X saying all this and getting those clips over to you guys. So I appreciate your time. Please like and subscribe. Let me know what you think about all this. Do you like the task force? Do you think the task force is a bad idea? Do you think it's a stunt for PR? Do you think it's federal government overreaching? Do you think it is justified and that these states need to get their stuff together? There's so many different angles to look at it that I could see quite a few different viewpoints, but I'm always happy to hear. Please keep it respectful, of course, but everybody love everybody. This has been another episode of What the X. What the X? If you like that clip, feel free to click on this clip or even this clip. And then, hey, don't forget about that clip over here. Thanks, guys.